His name is Gary. He moved into the house across from me, number 12, last spring. The first thing he showed up with was a bottle of cheap wine and a pepperoni pizza. Neighborhood wars start with a bad first impression, and I'm a peacemaker, he said, laughing too loudly. He was single, divorced, and worked remotely in data science. A bit clingy, but seemingly harmless. A nice guy who tries too hard. The first strange thing was funny. I was going to visit my sister for the weekend. When I returned, I found my lawn perfectly mown. Gary, sweaty and smiling, waved at me from the porch. I saw the grass was knee-deep. I couldn't stand it. You're ruining the whole street. I was a little taken aback, but I thanked him. After all, it was a free service. Then he started lifting my trash can from the curb and rolling it into my garage. Or you'll forget and get another ticket, he'd say. Sometimes I forgot. It was convenient. Convenience became habit, and habit became anticipation. One day, I was late for work. I came home at 10 o'clock. Gary was sitting on my porch. On mine, finally, he said, standing up. I was worried. No power, no car. I thought something had happened. I have a spare key to your garage, remember, the one I gave you in case the pipes burst? I looked in, it seems all right. My breath caught in my throat. He was in my garage because he was worried. I muttered something about hurrying and hurried inside, feeling the boundaries quietly shifting. A week later, I ordered a pizza. The delivery guy made a mistake and took it to Gary. I was about to call the pizzeria when Gary himself rang the doorbell with my pizza and 2 bottles of beer. If this is what fate has in store, he said cheerfully, why miss out? Let's have a blast. Let's have a blast. Old times not our thing, but I let him in. It felt awkward to refuse. He talked nonstop about work, about his ex-wife. And then he casually remarked, a girl came in yesterday with a nice bag. Will she be staying long? The girl turned out to be a delivery person with an online order. I said yes. He nodded. I see. And his gaze was far too interested. Then the call started. First, a house call. At 9 o'clock in the evening. Hi neighbor, your living room light has been on for 2 hours. Something wrong? Did you forget to turn it off? Then a call from my cell phone, Saturday morning. Hey, I just saw your car being driven home from the auto repair shop. Is everything okay? How much did you charge? He saw everything. He was always watching. I tried to gently pull away. I started parking in the garage so he couldn't see whether I was home or not. I stopped answering my phone after 8. The next morning, he met me at the mailboxes. His face was hurt like a child's. Did I do something wrong? He asked. I'm just used to caring. You're alone. And lonely people can be inattentive. Accidents happen. That phrase contained the first threat, the subtlest, disguised as concern. When I met Laura, we started dating. She spent the night at my place for the first time. That morning, we were drinking coffee in the kitchen, and I saw Gary at his window, binoculars in hand, staring intently, not into the distance, but straight at my kitchen. Our eyes met. He didn't look away. Slowly, very slowly, he smiled and waved, like an old friend. Laura asked, "Is this your neighbor? So friendly?" "Yes," I replied, "too friendly." I plucked up the courage and told him everything, face to face, that I didn't need his help, that I needed privacy, that the surveillance of my house had to stop. He listened, nodded, his eyes sad. Then he said, "Okay, I understand. Just know I'm here. If anything happens." There was silence for a whole week. I began to exhale. And then on Friday, Laura called me, her voice shaking with anger. "Who is this neighbor of yours, Gary?" It turned out he'd approached her in the supermarket parking lot. He'd called her by name. He'd said, "Glad to see Elias is finally with someone." He'd been so lonely after the whole Sarah thing. Sarah was my ex-wife, who died 3 years ago. I'd mentioned her to Gary a couple of times early on in a drunken conversation over that pizza, but he continued, "Just be careful with him. Since Sarah died, he's been having mood swings. Angry. He's not angry, just traumatized. If anything goes wrong, you know where I live. I'm always here to help." He wasn't threatening her. He was warning her. He was quietly digging a hole under our relationship, portraying himself as the savior and me as an unreliable, dangerous psychopath. I was furious. I ran out to him. The door was ajar. I pushed it open and walked in. In his living room, on a shelf, sat a framed photograph. My photograph. The one of me and Sarah on the beach, which I kept in a drawer in the bedroom. Next to it lay my long-lost baseball cap. On the table sat a mug I thought was broken. Souvenirs of my life. And on the wall hung a calendar. My calendar. The one that hung in the kitchen. It marked my appointments, my trips, and also, in a different color, Laura's visits. Questions and exclamation points. He came out of the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. "Oh," he said calmly, "I thought you'd come. I needed to talk about Laura. She doesn't seem like the best choice for you, but don't worry, I'll deal with her." I just walked out and called the police. They're searching his apartment now. They're finding my things. He denies everything. He says I gave him the photograph, that I'm unstable and forget where I put things. He's the model neighbor. I'm the guy with loss issues. The police look at me with pity. They believe him more than me, because he's calm, and I'm not. Laura left. Said she didn't want to be in the center of this sick drama. He got his way. Now I'm selling the house. But I know this isn't the end, because Gary doesn't want my things. He needs a role, a benefactor, a caregiver, a person who knows what's best for you, even if you don't know what's best for you. And he'll find a new lonely neighbor, maybe a widower, maybe a divorced man, someone vulnerable. He'll show up with pizza and cheap wine. He saved my daughter. It's important to understand that from the start. If it weren't for him, Lily probably wouldn't be alive. We live at the end of a dead-end street. We have only 2 neighbors. On the left, a young couple who are almost never home. And on the right, Lev, a large, quiet man of about 50, a former soldier, as he introduced himself. He had kind eyes and a firm handshake. Lily was 3 years old then. She slipped out of the house when I turned away for a second to answer the phone. She ran to the pond at the end of the street. I became hysterical and ran outside screaming. The first person I saw was Lev. He was already carrying her in his arms, wrapped in his large flannel robe. She was crying, and he patted her back soothingly. "It's okay," he said, looking me straight in the eyes. "I saw her. It won't happen again." And he made sure it never happened again. At first, it was gifts. Not for me, for Lily. A little wooden bird he'd carved himself, then a clay modeling kit. To develop her motor skills, he explained. He always found a pedagogical explanation. He started coming over when I was in the garden or washing dishes and asking, "Can I sit on the porch with her? Read something?" He read her old books with such clear, understandable moral principles. He never crossed the threshold unless I invited him. He was perfect. And then he started correcting. "I saw you bought her those fruit yogurts," he said one day. "They're full of sugar. I have a list of safe foods. Let me get them." "Your swing is on old chains," he remarked another time. "That's dangerous." I replaced them in the garage with nylon straps. "Can I install them?" I said yes. Because he was right. Because he cared. His care was heavy and warm. like a lead blanket. The first alarm bell rang quietly. Lily, who was almost 4, was playing in the sandbox. Lev sat on a bench, watching. I went out with the lemonade, and I heard my daughter, without looking at him, clearly say, "Can I go to the bathroom, Mr. Lev?" He nodded, and only then did she get up and run into the house. She had a question, but she was asking permission. From him, it became part of our routine, unspoken but obligatory. If we didn't go outside after dinner, there would be a quiet knock on the door. Is everything okay? Is Lily sick? If I turned on cartoons he didn't like too chaotic, he seemed to sense it from afar and would find an excuse to stop by, either to offer fresh vegetables from his garden or to ask about the leaky faucet. I tried to gently distance myself. I said we needed family time. He reacted with such understanding regret that I felt like an ungrateful idiot. Of course, he said. You need to be part of the family. I'm so used to taking care of people. After work, it's quiet here, and you're here with your daughter. I need someone to think about. He made us the meaning of his life, and it wasn't a gift, it was a debt that could never be repaid. I started dating Mark. He was a good man. The first time he stayed with us for the weekend, Lev came knocking on the garage door at 7 on a Sunday morning because he heard a strange knocking noise coming from my car engine. He saw Mark. His face didn't change, but his eyes, they were flat and cold, like a pike under ice. He bowed silently and left. A day later, a printout lay on my porch. An article from a local newspaper, 10 years old. A summary of a drunk driver's accident. The driver's name was Mark T. Same last name. Wrong Mark. Coincidence. But Lev carefully underlined it with a yellow marker. And a week later, Lily said playfully, "Mr. Lev says you have a new friend who might be dangerous." "What do you mean, dangerous?" "Mom." I exploded. I went up to him and told him everything, that his worrying was going too far, that he was scaring my daughter, that he had no right to discuss my personal life. He listened, sitting in his perfectly clean garage at his workbench, without interrupting. When I finished, he slowly wiped his hands with a rag. "I understand your fear," he said quietly. "Loneliness is a terrible thing. It makes you grab onto the first thing that seems safe. Even if it's dangerous, I wasn't discussing your life. I was protecting the child. You're her mother. But even mothers make mistakes sometimes, especially when they're alone and scared." And then he looked at me, and there was no anger or resentment in his gaze. There was confidence. "She calls me when you're not in the room," he said without malice. "She says you're screaming on the phone, that you sometimes cry. She comes running to me when she's scared. Do you think I created this? I was just here, ready to catch what was falling." At that moment, I realized the most terrible thing. He hadn't kidnapped my daughter. He hadn't threatened her. He had created a safe haven for her. A safer haven than I could ever hope to, because I was alive, emotional, and tired. And he was an unwavering, predictable support. And in her 3-year-old and now 4-year-old mind, he had become a reference point, a norm. I'm selling the house. Mark is helping. We're moving to another state. Lily often asks about Mr. Lev. She cries. She says she misses his stories, his tight hugs. I told the policeman everything. He listened, took notes, then he sighed. "Miss, he didn't threaten. He didn't harm her. He was looking after her with your permission. He brought gifts. He expressed concern for her safety. He wrote an anonymous comment on the article. That's not a crime. He's an overprotective neighbor. Maybe he's lonely. You should try talking." Lev stands on the porch and watches us load our things. He doesn't wave. He doesn't smile. He just watches. With the same expression on his face as when he carried the rescued Lily to me. The expression of a man who has caught something precious but had to let it go. For now, I'm taking my daughter thousands of miles away, but I won't take away what he instilled in her. That inner compass that now sometimes pulls toward firmness, not love, toward order, not spontaneity, toward silence, not my sometimes trembling voice. He's not a child abductor. He built a small, solid room inside my daughter, one to which I don't have a key, a room that's always quiet, smells of wood and safety, and where on the wall hangs a portrait of a man who knows what's best for her. And the worst part, someday, at a difficult moment in her life, she'll want to go back there herself, in her imagination, and I can't even explain why that place is the most terrifying prison I've ever seen. Because it's not built of evil, it's built of the purest, most indestructible, most poisonous thing in the world, of obsessive love for a stranger. After my divorce, I moved into this third-floor apartment. I needed silence, walls, space to recover. My neighbor downstairs, Mrs. Elsie, seemed like a sweet old lady. Every time she saw me in the elevator, she'd offer me candy from her purse and whisper, "Hush, dear, the walls can hear you." I thought it was some kind of metaphor. At first, everything was perfect, absolute silence. Then, exactly a month later, the knocking began. It wasn't an aggressive knock, not a shut-up sound. It was methodical, precisely at 10:30 p.m. as I lay down to read in the chair by the floor lamp. 1, 2, 3, a 10-second pause, then 2 more knocks. It was coming from downstairs, from her apartment, like someone tapping a mop handle on the ceiling. I came downstairs, apologized, and asked if I'd made the noise. She opened the door with the chain, her face pale and frightened. "Oh, it wasn't you, dear," she whispered. "It's the old pipes, or maybe rats in the ceiling. They're walking around there, eavesdropping." I suggested calling a plumber or an exterminator. She shook her head. "Don't. They don't like that." The knocking continued. The time began to change. Sometimes at 11 p.m., sometimes at midnight. Always when I was home alone. I started writing it down. I wrote down the time. It never happened 2 days in a row. It was as if someone was watching and choosing the moment when I was most relaxed. One day, I couldn't stand it anymore. When the knocking started, I grabbed my old calipers, a hobby kit, and slammed them hard on the floor 3 times. There was a dead silence. The next day, there was a knock on the door. It wasn't her. It was the manager, an elderly man with tired eyes. "Mrs. Elsie complained about you stamping your feet at night. She is a very elderly, sick woman. She has high blood pressure. Please calm down." I tried to explain the knocking. He looked at me sympathetically. "She lives alone. It's as quiet as a coffin. You probably hear other sounds too." I bought a carpet. I started tiptoeing. The knocking continued. It became more and more varied. Now it wasn't knocking, but scraping. Long, slow, as if something was dragging along her ceiling. On my floor, right under the bed. I tried talking to the other neighbors. A young man lived next door. When I mentioned the sounds, his face turned stony. "The old woman's a little crazy." He pointed to his temple. "But she's lived here since this house was built. Everyone knows her. It's best not to mess with her." The neighbor upstairs, an elderly man, simply closed the door without a word. I was starting to go crazy. I caught myself frozen in the middle of the room, listening. I was sleeping, covered with a pillow. One night, while cleaning, I turned on loud music. 5 minutes later, the police knocked on the door. An anonymous complaint of inappropriate behavior and a public disturbance at night. Mrs. Elsie, in her nightgown, stood in the doorway of her apartment, trembling, looking at me with tear-stained eyes as if I were her tormentor. The police had warned me. I understood the rules of the game. She wasn't crazy. She was a genius. She made a noise and then complained about my reaction to it. She made me look like the aggressor in everyone's eyes. The knocking stopped. In its place was a smell. A sweet, cloying scent of old perfume or something similar. It seeped through the bathroom vent. I couldn't wash my face without smelling it. It was everywhere. I cleaned the vents, taped them shut. The smell found another way, through the outlets, from under the baseboards. I called the gas company. A repairman came. He didn't smell anything. You're imagining it. But when he checked the riser, he found an old shutoff valve in the basement, right under my riser. A thin silicone tube was neatly attached to it. It ran along the main pipe and disappeared into the wall, toward Mrs. Elsie's apartment. The repairman swirled his whiskey. Grandma probably blew some incense. Safe, but strange. It wasn't a scent tube. It was a proven connection, a physical thread between her world and mine. That night, the knocking returned, but this time, it was on the wall, near the headboard. And it wasn't just a knock, it was code, Morse code. Like many others, I only knew SOS. It wasn't SOS. I recorded it on a voice recorder. This morning, I transcribed the recording online. 3 words. You're home? I didn't go to her. I didn't call the police. I realized that was the goal. To make me come. To break in. To scream. So she could call the police and show them a crazy, aggressive neighbor stalking a defenseless old woman. I packed my things. I took only the essentials. As I was carrying out my suitcase, the door to her apartment opened slightly. She stood in the crack, not decrepit, not frightened, upright. In her hands was a long, thin cane with a sharp metal tip. With this cane, she could reach the ceiling. With this cane, she could knock. "Are you leaving, dear?" she asked in a quiet, sad whisper. "Too bad. I've gotten used to you. Now it will be boring. Until I find someone new." She smiled. The smile of someone who has just won a long, difficult game of solo play. I moved out. I lost my security deposit. I told my landlord I was leaving for work. Last week, I was driving past this building. Washing was drying on the balcony of my old apartment. Someone new was living there. Mrs. Elsie was sitting on a bench by the entrance. Next to her sat my former upstairs neighbor, the same one who slammed the door in my face. They were chatting peacefully. He was saying something, gesturing. She listened attentively, nodding, and they both laughed quietly. She seemed the life of the party. Suddenly, I understood everything. She wasn't waging war. She was having fun, and she wasn't alone. She wasn't just some old woman. She was a predator who had found the perfect hunting ground, an apartment building where everyone suspected each other but trusted the seemingly weaker one. Her weapon was the compassion she evoked. Her prey, the peace and equanimity of others. And she's in no hurry. She has time, eternity. And there are so many empty apartments in this world where a lonely, vulnerable person, yearning for silence, could move in. She'll give him silence for the first month, and then she'll start giving him sounds and smells and the feeling that the walls of his new home, they're not protecting. They're listening, and they're on her side. Check more than just the plumbing and wiring when you rent. Ask why the previous apartment is empty, and if there's a sweet, lonely, elderly woman in the building who knows everyone and smiles at everyone, run. It all started with a fence. My wife, Jen, and I, along with our 2 children, always had an old, sagging picket fence between our property and the neighbors. It was beautiful, but shabby. In the spring, Clematis climbed it. A new neighbor, Martin, bought the house to the right after old Mr. Bird died. He introduced himself casually, without a smile, and handed over a business card. Martin Foster, risk manager. That first Saturday, he walked up to the fence, knocked on a rotten board, and said, "This violates 3 clauses of the HOA bylaws, and it's a safety hazard. The children could get hurt. I'll take care of it." We politely declined. "Thank you, but we like our old fence." He nodded, but there was a flicker of coldness in his eyes, as if we hadn't answered the password. A week later, we received an official letter from the HOA, a complaint from the owner of lot #7, that was him, about a dangerous structure that poses a health hazard and lowers property values in the area. Photos were attached. Very high quality, obviously taken by a drone. Our fence looked like the ruins of a tsunami. "It's just a denunciation," Jen said. "We paid the fine and hired a carpenter to reinforce the picket fence, but not replace it." Martin watched the work from his window, and the next day, the second phase began, the noise. He installed a powerful air conditioning system in his garage, workshop, in the yard, 3 meters from our shared boundary, and it turned on at precisely 11 p.m. and turned off at 7 a.m. A monotonous, low hum that rattled in our bedroom windows. We knocked on his door. He opened it in his robe, looking surprised. "Oh, sorry, it's just equipment for my hobby. It needs to operate within a certain temperature range. I'll set a timer." The noise continued. It started at 6 a.m. and lasted until 11 p.m. We called the local police officer. Martin arrived with a folder of documents, an installation permit, noise level certificates, which he said were within acceptable limits, even a doctor's note confirming the need for a stable microclimate for the restoration work, for medical reasons. The officer shrugged. The law is on his side. Try to negotiate. Agreement was impossible. Every complaint we made turned into a counterattack. Had our children really left their bikes by the fence? He sent a photo to the homeowners association with the caption, "Trespassing on common property, risk of property damage." Had our dog, a golden retriever named Buddy, once barked at a squirrel in his direction? A day later, we received a letter from his lawyer about systematic disorderly conduct and possible Dangerous Animals Act charges. He fought bureaucracy and impeccable, icy enforcement of the rules, and he did it systematically. We noticed our problems were mounting. Our mailbox started acting up, letters were getting lost, especially those concerning our complaints to the city. Garbage trucks began accidentally skipping our container. Martin always took his container out perfectly clean, exactly 1 minute before the truck arrived, and then watched as our overflowing trash can remained on the sidewalk, resulting in another fine from the HOA. The neighbors, who had initially sympathized with us, began to distance themselves. One day at a barbecue, I overheard a snippet of conversation. They probably got him themselves. Martin is quiet, polite, and has a championship quality lawn, and they, with their old fence and constant problems. And then I understood his true strategy. He didn't want to intimidate us directly. He wanted to discredit us, to portray them as problematic, inadequate neighbors in the eyes of the entire community, so that any complaint we made against him would be perceived as the hysteria of a dysfunctional family. Our good-natured golden retriever, who used to lick the vet's hands, suddenly became a threat. Martin installed hidden cameras with motion sensors along the fence. Then he sent us a dossier, 14 videos of Buddy running up to the fence, wagging his tail. The captions read, "Attempt to climb a barrier, demonstrating aggressive behavior near the boundary. He demanded that we take action, or he would sue." We were forced to keep Buddy indoors and only walk him on a leash to the far end of the yard. The children cried. Our daughter, Ellie, she was 6 years old. She drew a sun and a rainbow with chalk on the asphalt in front of our house. Part of the rainbow extended 5 centimeters into the public space of the sidewalk. An hour later, the police and a social worker arrived at our house. An anonymous call, we all knew who it was from. reported a small child left unattended in the roadway and possible signs of psychological distress in the family. Martin stood by the window while we, pale, talked to the police officer. He drank coffee. His face was completely impassive. That evening, I saw him in the yard. He was watering the lawn, meticulously trimmed to the millimeter. I went out without shouting. I simply stood by the fence. "What do you want, Martin?" I asked quietly. "Leave? Sell you the house cheap? What?" He turned off the water and turned around. There was no malice or hatred in his gaze. There was a satisfied coldness. "I want everything to follow the rules," he said clearly. "I want to live in order and safety. Your chaos, your carelessness, your emotions, they're contagious. They threaten that order. I'm simply protecting what's important, civilization, from chaos." He didn't speak like a vengeful neighbor. He spoke like a fanatic, like a crusader fighting disorder. And we were that disorder. We lost. We're selling the house, not to him, to someone else, but we're leaving. Because I realized the worst thing. Martin isn't a monster. He's the HOA bylaws taken to their absolute limits. He's the cold letter of the law, devoid of mercy. He is the quiet, rational, undeniable horror of civilization. The one that doesn't slap you in the face, but slowly, drop by drop, squeezes your own life out of you, using its own rules against you. He will stay here, he will water his lawn, he will complain to the new neighbors if they dare install the wrong bench or get the wrong breed of dog. He will guard his perfect, sterile, lifeless order. And we take the children, we take Buddy, we take our broken souls, we run. And it's not defeat, it's survival. His weapon is a certificate. His armor is a charter. And his victims never look like victims. They just look like losers who couldn't live by the rules. I live in a normal neighborhood, not the middle of nowhere, not the slums, a comfortable middle-class neighborhood somewhere in Ohio. And my neighbor, Tom, seemed just as normal. A little lonely, quiet. He tended his lawn like a golf course. We occasionally exchanged a few words about the weather while taking out the trash. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. Late evening, Sunday. Not a doorbell, not a knock. A soft but distinct sound as if someone had run a metal object along the crack between the door and the frame. Just once. I went over and looked through the peephole. No one was there. I thought I was imagining it. But the next morning, as I was leaving for work, I saw a neat pile of cigarette butts on the doorstep. My cigarette butts. I throw them in a tin can on the porch, then shake them out once a week. They were piled up like a small funeral pyre, and from the ashes sticking out, my old, broken car key fob emerged, the same one I'd lost a month ago. I chalked it up to coincidence. Maybe the wind, maybe the raccoons. But then something else started happening. Small things started disappearing. Not from the house, but from outside. Gardening gloves from the shed, a watering can, then a few bills disappeared from the mailbox. I called the company, they said they'd sent them. I started checking the doorbell camera. It was always clean. But one night, at 3:17, the camera froze for a second, went dark, and then started working again, as if it had been rebooted. For the first time, I felt a chill, and I looked at Tom's house. His second-story window, usually dark, momentarily glowed with a dim blue light, the light from the screen. The curtain twitched. I decided to talk, neighborly. I approached him as he was trimming the bushes. "Tom, hi. Have you seen anyone wandering around here at night? My mail is being stolen." He straightened up. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. They were glassy. "No, I haven't seen anyone. But you know, we live in a quiet neighborhood. You probably put it somewhere yourself and forgot. Your garage, I tell you, is in terrible shape. I never invited him into the garage. That same night, I heard a creak, not outside the door, on the roof. Clear, heavy footsteps, not a cat's, human. I ran outside with a flashlight, no one. But in the soft ground under the drain pipe of my house, there was a boot print, a big one, the same size as Tom's. I called the police. They came and shook their heads. The neighbor says, "You're paranoid, sir, that you work from home and rarely see people. Maybe you should see a psychologist." They didn't even go to see Tom. They said there was no evidence. I bought extra locks. I installed a camera in the backyard. I started sleeping with a bat by my bed, and everything became quieter, too quiet. Tom stopped leaving the house. His house was dark, the curtains drawn. I started thinking I was imagining things. Maybe I really was going crazy from loneliness. And then Kate came back, my ex. We broke up 6 months ago, and she stopped by to pick up the last few boxes. We sat, drank coffee, and reminisced. It was warm, human. As she left, we hugged by her car. I saw it, and, as I later realized, someone else did too. 2 days later, she calls me, hysterical. What kind of psychological games are these? Are you completely crazy? I didn't understand anything. It turned out she'd received an email from my address. No message, just an attachment, an audio file. The very conversation we'd had over coffee. The whole thing, from "Hi, come in" to the sound of the door closing. A clean, perfect recording, as if the microphone had been lying on the table between us. I didn't have a recorder at home. I didn't record it. An icy wave rolled from the back of my head to the toes. He was in the house. While we were talking, he was in the house. Or he'd prepared something in advance. I hurried to check. I found a small sticky strip in the electrical outlet in the living room, a trace of tape behind the sofa, another one on the curtain rod in the bedroom. He'd been listening. He'd been recording. Not for a week. Maybe for months. I collected all the evidence. A photo of a fingerprint, a screenshot of Kate's letter, a video recording. I went to him from the security cameras, not like a neighbor, like going to war. The door didn't open right away. Then the lock clicked. He was standing in the dim hallway, in a regular t-shirt and pants. Nothing sinister. "Tom, stop it. I know everything. I'm going to the police. Right now." He looked at the folder in my hands and smiled, sincerely, widely. "Come in," he said simply. "I'll show you something." And he retreated deeper into the house. Madness? Probably. But I went in. I needed to understand why. I needed proof. The living room was empty, just a chair, and the walls, floor to ceiling, were covered with photographs, printouts, diagrams, my photographs, my schedule, my shopping list, printouts of my social media posts with comments in his handwriting. Lies, afraid of this, nostalgic for this, and in the center, a large map of my house with marks: listening point A, bedroom, observation point B, back kitchen window, and in red letters on my bedroom, "He feels safe here." I turned around. He was standing at the exit, blocking the door, not with a knife. His hands were empty. "You don't understand," he said quietly, almost reproachfully. "I'm making you a better person. I'm studying you. You're so careless. You live carelessly. You don't take out the trash on time. You mow the lawn crookedly. I'm helping you discipline yourself. So you'll become the perfect neighbor. So you'll fit in." He stepped forward. I recoiled. He spoke in the same casual, neighborly tone he used when he talked about the weather. I fixed everything after you, picked up your trash, returned your things, even eavesdropped on your boring conversations with that idiot. I care about you more than anyone else. Why don't you appreciate that? He was 2 steps away. His eyes glittered with a strange, paternal approval. The most terrifying thing in that moment was the realization. For him, it wasn't horror. It was concern. Twisted, all-consuming, but in his mind, perfectly logical. He wasn't a maniac. I broke free. I don't remember how. I just rushed to the door, pushing him away. He didn't resist. He just looked at me, sadly, as if I were an ungrateful son. Now I'm at the station, writing up a report. I have the address. There are photos from the walls. The police are going to take it away. But I know this isn't the end, because the court can issue a restraining order. They can even send him for a psychiatric evaluation. For a while, but he knows everything. He knows how I open the door, where I sleep, what I'm afraid of. He knows my daily routine better than I know myself. He studied me for years. And this obsession, it can't be cured with pills. It can't be cured with a court order. He'll move to a new neighborhood. Maybe he'll change his name, but he won't be able to stop, because there's always another neighbor nearby, one with an unkempt lawn, with trash that isn't taken out on time, with a lonely, vulnerable life.